Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is a very special holiday party. We have two authors that we love, but we also, well, one we're just meeting, but I'm sure we're going to love him. And we also have Four Branches Bourbon here, compliments of the people who make and sell it, and anyone here in the audience is enjoying a free sample. I also haven't told you, but all of our hardcover books, if you want to buy one tonight, are 20% off just for you and just for tonight. So if you want to do a little shopping after that, you can do that. I know. Right. So we're delighted to have Steve Urszenyi back. Steve lives in Toronto, and an origin story when he published his first book, which we wanted to sell for our first mystery club. It's not possible to ship books in and out of Canada. There's a serious Canadian duty that's involved, and it costs a fortune. So Steve very kindly drove from Toronto to the fabled UPS store right over the border of New York, which Kevin Hearn has trained, right? No, it's true.
Yeah,
he has.
Lewiston, New York.
That's right. So Steve drove over to Lewiston, New York, and signed, a couple of, whatever it was, 100 and some books and all, and they came down here. So I thought that was a real effort, and I appreciate it. And you have been back for your second book, and now you're here tonight.
Yeah, and I appreciated the effort of getting those books here. So it was a pleasure to go sign them. We made a day trip. My wife and I made a day trip out of it. So it was fun.
Oh, going to New York.
Going to Lewiston, as one
day.
does.
Right. And, this is a good time to say for those of you watching, that we support debuts as much as we can, because I'm always thinking about who are going to be the next, Reacher or whatever it all is. And increasingly, it's really up to the author to do the work that publishers used to do back when we started the bookstore in 1989. Authors really have to invite people to come and make an effort. We do what we can. We have a huge mailing list. It's like 22,000 people and all, but there's no way to know how many Urszenyi people are on it. Mm-hmm. And currently, probably, since we're about to sell out your book, there will be new people now for Ryan. But so I really appreciate your doing that. Ryan has come here on his own. I mentioned the fact that publisher support is minimal. Hello, Berkeley.
Sorry, Tom.
Right. And so, I really appreciate you all coming out tonight, since they've made this big effort to come here. It's great that you made an effort to come. And finally, our friends from Four Branch Bourbon. So why don't you talk about, in fact, part of the reason they're here, guys?
Yeah, sure. Why not? So first of all, cheers to everybody for joining us tonight. Cheers to Mike and Cheryl and Four Branches Bourbon.
Yeah, thank you to both of them.
I've known Mike, I guess. I guess it came up for me because I met Mike, what my wife Lynn calls my virtual friends, because I met Mike over the internet years ago. Not sure how we became introduced, but we did, and we began corresponding, and with Cheryl as well. And when I heard Michael was venturing into the bourbon trade and developing this bourbon, it came with a great history, which I loved and I related to right away. The Four Branches, of course, being the four branches of the U.S. military, and all the founders, the co-founders, have all served. So I thought, what a natural fit for my book, my character, the Alex Martell series. It just seemed like the right idea. The drink honorably, sip to remember. The mottos of Four Branches Bourbon just went so well with my character, and that's why I wanted to honor the bourbon and honor my characters by having them, present the bourbon to the readership. So that's really where it came from. And
you included them in the book, right? You
the bourbon,
the bourbon guys.
Yeah, no,
right.
I didn't mention Mike and Cheryl specifically,
No,
but the bourbon is in both books 1 and 2. So Perfect Shot and Out in the Cold, and it has a special role in Blood Oath as well.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, she's not a teetotaler. CIA intelligence officer, but not a teetotaler. How about you, Ryan?
And so I wrote like 5 books before I ever got published, and I always kind of included like novel drinks that I would, no pun intended, novel drinks that I would find or different alcohols or whatever. And I found this bourbon actually prior to meeting Mike. I had found it, and I really liked it. I was kind of a bourbon guy. My brother and brother-in-law, we would always do like this little bourbon exchange, and I got shared this by a friend of mine in the Air Force. I tried it. I was like, this is my new favorite, but I couldn't really get it a lot of the time. So it was kind of like one of those novel things. So I was like, oh, I'm going to put it in my book. And then eventually I got published, and then I was like, oh shoot, this is going to get published. So I immediately reached out and was like, hey, can I, not that I don't think you would have minded, but, can I put this in the book? Do you mind like having it tied?
Do you know
to
that
my
people
book?
have killed people here in the poison pen? And C.J. Box, who was one of them, did not ask me. It was okay,
See, you got to ask. You got to ask.
No, actually, it was kind of a neat surprise. But the thing was, he sent me an advanced reading copy, and then every couple of days he'd say, have you read it yet? And it was still way far in advance, so I can't read that far ahead. So he'd keep saying, have you read the book yet? No. And then finally I read the book, and there it was, the killing field. The bad guy was staying at the Valley Ho. The killing field is Scottsdale, and the murder takes place, assassination takes place here at the Poison Pen. So I said to him, wow, I see why. He went, I thought you were never going to read it. It was like, I know. So thrillers have like other genres. They have like subgenres, and military thrillers are a big, important part of it. It seems to me increasingly, guys, that it's actually veterans who are writing them. I mean, adding authenticity and other things. But Steve, your background's a little different because you're Canadian. So tell us about your own, because I think you have a really fabulous history in law enforcement.
Well, thank you. I spent 30 years as a paramedic in Toronto and environs. And many of those years I spent with the Ontario Provincial Police as what's called a tactical medic, so embedded in police special operations. So I was a medic with SWAT and CBRNE, which is chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosives response. I did that for a number of years, and that's where I think a lot of the information I have and use and the tactics I apply in the stories comes from that background. So that's just been a lot of fun. It was a highlight of my career to do it, and it was a real highlight to bring that into my writing as well.
One of the things that I've enjoyed about Steve is the places that we get to go in his books. Finland. So we'll talk about that. But Ryan, you're a Navy veteran. So,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what prompted you to start writing 5 books that didn't get published and a new one that did? Well, it's all practice. I mean, nobody knows how to write a book just sort of cold.
Yeah, so I did 12 years. I was I was on a good career path in the Navy. I was a helicopter pilot, and I had an emergency landing that I got injured. I had a cervical and brain injury that I never quite recovered from, despite my incessant trying to recover from it, and just kind of force trying to stay up in flight status. Eventually, I got my flight status revoked, and I got medically separated from the Navy after 12 years. So at that point, the decision was kind of made for me. And I had kind of dedicated my whole life to that, and I didn't really know what I was going to do anymore. That was all I ever wanted to do. So I was kind of lost. I was dealing with some PTSD, and I just started. My wife wanted me to go see a therapist. I started seeing a therapist, even though I was not the type of person to do that. It was kind of one of those ultimatum things, like you go talk to somebody, and so I did. And
they come up in marriage, don't
yeah,
they? I know.
And it was the best
my
thing though,
husband is
because
sitting here
it was the
tonight.
best thing because I was in denial. I was like a type A personality, like no, I'm fine. And but it was manifesting in different kind of ways, and it was kind of it was not healthy. And so I finally accepted it, started talking to somebody, and they had me start journaling. So I started just journaling about my experiences, and a lot of stuff that I was writing about was about, drug cartel operations and stuff. So I was like fictionalizing these journal entries, like not writing about it as myself because I was sharing them in group discussions, and I kind of felt self-conscious about it and didn't want to share certain things. So I was essentially writing these little short stories, and I'd never written before in my life, but it was like literally fixing me. And literally after like 4 or 5 months, I didn't even need to talk to the therapist anymore. It was like I just needed to do that. And then I was like, well, instead of just wasting my time journaling before work, maybe I can actually put this towards something. So I decided to just dabble into writing a book. And I didn't tell my wife. I wrote 2 books without even telling her. And I did it before work. And then eventually I was like, okay, this is going to take a really big commitment to actually try and become a writer. So I should probably tell her and see what she thinks. So yeah, she read it, and she read one of them, and was like, you should keep going. So then,
it
just
really helps
launched
to
from
have
there.
a supportive spouse or family.
Definitely.
in this
Absolutely.
operation. Your wife does a lot in terms of your books,
Yeah, very much so. I mean, Lynn is, I always describe Lynn as my first reader, my first editor, and my first and biggest critic. And all of those things, all of those rules are important. So she reads everything, not necessarily as I go. As a matter of fact, I just finished a novel outside the series, and she hasn't read anything. She knows the concept, she knows a bit about the story, but she hasn't seen the manuscript yet. But I count on her because she's been a college professor for 40 years. So she has a very keen eye and not shy about sharing her opinion on what I've written, which is, I think, what every writer needs, because we tend to be, I think, as writers, we're both a little self-conscious about our writing, but we're also, I think, fairly prideful about our writing. So we need someone with enough strength to overcome our own reluctance to believe that we've made a mistake or didn't do what's best for the story. So Lynn's been that fantastic editor for me.
Killing your darlings, which
Oh,
is
she is.
a phrase that comes up in publishing where you might have written something that's really beautiful or interesting or something, but it doesn't serve the story.
Absolutely.
And therefore, it needs to go, but that's so hard.
Yeah.
So you do need...
She has a red pen, and I have had
not
afraid to use it.
I love it.
So.
All right. Okay, so thanks to Steve that Ryan is here because for reasons unclear to me, his book wasn't presented to us when it published. Right. Grr. So I really am grateful that Steve suggested that they come here together. And therefore I read Blood and Treasure and really was blown away for it. And I'm trying, there's a guy named Andrew Leddington. You might have run across him. And he's kind of doing the same thing. It's kind of like there's a ancient artifact, so there's the Indiana Jones kind of thing. There's the Clive Cussler adventure, some guy working on, finding the artifact or doing stuff like that. I love books like that. I also like heist books. I don't know, they're kind of in abeyance at the moment, but Christopher Reich has written a really terrific heist book called The Tourist, which we have up in front. I always am seeing Taupe copy, Peter Ustinov dangling from the ceiling, of the museum and the whole bit. But anyway, so I thought your book, it struck several chords with me.
Thank
but
you.
What I think is especially interesting is that, and the copy confused me because it sounds like it's going to be a science fiction book in that the International Space Station takes a hit and bad things happen there. And so I found, I was thinking it was going to be more like a science fiction thriller, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of a crossover. There's some elements to it that kind of dabble in that, but
it's
I
much
think
more like Clive than
yes,
it is
yes.
like Andy Weir.
And I think that they, so it's published by Berkeley, and they really didn't know what to do with me because it is kind of a little bit of a crossover, and the way it's written, there's a lot of twists and compounded twists in the book that it was hard to sell because they couldn't really divulge
into a comfortable niche.
Exactly. So we had to kind of pick a route to go with, and that was kind of the route they went with the flap copy. And then so I kind of pushed heavily to have the cover be more of an adventure looking cover to kind of balance that out a little bit, because it did read a little more like almost like an Andy Weir kind of thing. So I was heavily I wanted the cover to look like an adventure novel so that you kind of had an idea of what you were getting into a little bit. But that's also kind of the fun, right? So you're a little more surprised.
I was definitely surprised. And I really liked The Martian. And part of the reason I liked The Martian is that he explained how the things that happen to the guy that gets left behind on Mars and how's he going to survive. He took you through it in a way that you could see that it actually was going to be possible. Assuming you were in Mars, that you have to go with that. But assuming that you were in Mars, the things that unfolded actually seemed possible. The person could do that.
Yes.
Also, people in that situation, the ones that survive are the ones that just never give up. That's been true of books about plane crashes and all. Most people die in a plane crash, but sometimes there's that one guy or woman who's just not going to die. She's going to get out of the plane or whatever. And I thought that it worked really well. You have a kind of nifty little marketing thing for your book. You might want to show us how that works, and then we'll talk about the book.
So this cover, has a special feature. So in all the books that you buy from here, there'll be this little thing in here. It's a sticker. You can stick it in the book if you want, but I was told a lot of collectors don't like it stuck in the book. But
No, they like it stuck.
you
They
can
don't
also
want
get it on
glued.
my. You can also get it on my website. So if you get the book, even if you have an ebook, it works with a digital picture of the book cover. But if you go to my website or you scan this QR code or click the link on my website and then point your phone camera at the book cover, it completely comes alive and it's interactive. So it's an augmented reality book cover through your phone. It's kind of hard to show.
Isn't that great?
I think it'll be really hard to
AI
show.
taking it. No, but
Yeah, it was
that's
actually
what
no AI. We used no AI.
No
we
AI?
had CGI animators that actually did it. So I produced it all myself. So the cover completely comes alive, and it's a little bit of an interactive puzzle, and then has like a little question for you, and then it kind of leads you into almost like a mini book trailer for what you're about to jump into.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really cool.
It's fun. I originally did it with the intent of booksellers, like to have the book, face out and have something that was.
in case the publisher sent us a book.
Well, I was hoping the publisher would put it on the jacket, but it didn't work out that way. But it all the matter. Like I'm gonna keep doing it for all my books because it's really fun, and the fans who've read it really enjoy it and think it's really kind
Right,
of.
so
And I found that young kids really like it too. So like they like it just for the novel idea of it. So they'll.
Yeah, but that comes back to my point about it's up to authors to a great extent to find ways to market their book in conjunction with a good bookstore.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And a good book.
Right. All right. Well, we'll come back to you, but let's talk to Steve for a minute. Steve, why is it, a lot of thrillers are purely domestic, but not a lot, some. But it seems to me that more thrillers increasingly are really international thrillers. So how do you decide on the location for your, I'm trying to remember where I remember Finland.
Yeah, the first one, so Perfect Shot took place largely, it started out in the Netherlands, in
Right.
England, and The Hague, and went to France.
Right.
So a lot of it was in France, etc. Sorry, I got distracted there by bourbon being stolen here.
We said they could have
Don't forget
it.
to turn in your
Absolutely.
keys, please.
And the second one was Helsinki. I grew up reading Robert Ludlum and even Tom Clancy, who really brought the reader to different locations, international locations. And I was always attracted to that. And for me, it's very much about write what you enjoy reading. So that whole travel component, I thought that was really important for me. So I enjoy traveling. My wife and I enjoy traveling. It's funny because this third book, Blood Oath, the first two are set mostly in the European continent, whereas this third book is set in Tanzania, and with reference to Washington, et cetera. But Tanzania is the primary setting. And I had done a safari back in 2019 with my wife to Tanzania. And while I was there, this is before I was published at all. So it was still a fantasy, a bit of a dream to be published. But while in Tanzania, I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could set a book here? But one of the obstacles I thought there might be to setting a story there is that the readers in general are very comfortable, I think, with European settings, UK settings, even Central America, South American settings, and of course, at home in America, for thrillers. But I thought Africa might be a bridge too far for some, because I think to get into a book or to read a book about a place, you have to have some comfort and familiarity already with that place, have been exposed to it in reading or videos or movies, and I thought Africa might not be the place. But
You were right, because generally Africa is a place where books go to die.
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly.
No, it's true. But finish up, and then I'll tell you something.
Yeah, so
that's-
just I thought it was such a beautiful atmosphere, and the nature of the story I thought lent itself to being set in a location like a safari in Tanzania, and that's how it developed.
No, I can see that. So you're right that it is a place that is not frequently used as a background for a thriller. But last week when we did our other thriller night, both Andrews and Wilson, who write
Yes.
together, had written their final Tom Clancy, and it's brilliant. I mean, I'm sorry, Clancy fans, but I actually think some of the legacy authors are writing better than the original author. I think Brad Battles writes way better than Stuart Woods in the last years of his life. I mean, he's amazing. But anyway, their conversation, it takes place in Angola, and it's about a coup, and it's the Ryan's younger son. You know, we know about Jack Jr., right? But he has a brother called Kyle and a sister called Katie. And so they wanted to bring the younger Ryans into it, and they staged it in Angola. And they pointed out that West Africa is increasingly going to come into play in the real world because, you know, we have the Atlantic, and it's going to be important for that. But also the Chinese have an increasing presence in Africa with their Belt and Road program and all. And so, you know, there weren't that many thrillers written about the Middle East until after 9/11 and whatever. And before then, China was, you know, in play, and it'll come back into play any moment. We can see that as Japan is, you know, and Taiwan, all that other crap.
Yeah.
But I think that you're kind of in the van at the moment of setting books in Africa, and Brian and Jeff did a really good job kind of paving the way.
Well, and that's, you know, the stories, as much as they are, I'm not even sure how to, you know, paint the Alex Martel series sometimes, other than international thrillers. But one thing that's for sure, geopolitics is a topic that has always interested me. And the geopolitics, the geopolitical situation in Africa is quite serious from a global.
More so.
Yeah, absolutely. So seeing there's a number of things happening, of course, in Africa right now, but the major superpowers are certainly vying for control, hearts and minds, whatever you want to call it.
I was going to say the natural resources
Absolutely.
are a huge part of it.
Yeah, and that's all the Belt and Road Initiative that China has launched is all focused on acquiring as much of the natural resources as they can. And of course, Russia's there to make money and stage influence operations, et cetera. So I thought it was going to create chaos, and I thought it was a great way, a great location. The backstory, of course, is that, you know, the MSS Chinese Ministry of State Security is after Alex's dad as well, and Russians have a play as well. So I thought it was a great place because of the geopolitical context.
So in this book, you give her a stake in this book by having her father kidnapped.
Absolutely,
while
yeah.
on safari. So it isn't the CIA that is sending her out.
That's right, and I wanted it to be a more personal story. It was always I always thought that, you know, book one was here we meet Alex. Book two was and it's kind of a global threat scenario. Book two was more about, again, geopolitics, deception operations, conspiracy, that type of thing. Book three, I always wanted to be more of a personal story for Alex, and that's why I brought her dad into it in a situation where he's been kidnapped, and of course, a vow they made when she was quite young comes into play.
It's a crackerjack story, but
Thank you.
I like the fact that she's doing this for personal reasons,
Right.
and not like on a mission. Or it is a mission, but it's
Yeah.
her own mission.
Almost fighting the interests of her own
Right.
agency in a way.
So finding background, the International Space Station, you're really pushing the boundary there.
Yeah,
No,
I did.
no, he's in
I
the
went for it.
international space, but I was comparing it to Andy Weir's using Mars as a background. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
Yeah, you mean like why I kind of chose the International Space Station
I
for
thought
something?
it was interesting that you have paired the International Space Station and I'm going blank.
and like a relic from ancient
and,
times.
And
Yeah.
then, the Indiana Jones part where
Yeah,
we're looking
so
for the
I
rope.
was really trying to, like, I had written 2 Ethan Cain books before this Blood and Treasure, and I kind of had started to do something, and what I really was trying to do was revive what we all loved about Indiana Jones, but not copy it, which is what everyone always did. So everyone tried to like make an adventure book or movie or whatever, and it would copy Indiana Jones or make fun of the adventure genre. It either did one or the other, and it never really satisfied me, who was an adventure lover, right? So and I loved reading Clive Cussler growing up, and I wanted to, so that I just naturally was inclined to that. But I wanted to do something different. So I thought, okay, well, what if I take the ultra modern and the ultra ancient, and I find a way to make them come on a collision course to the end of the story. So that's what I tried to do. And I thought, okay, how can I come out with a really big bang in a story that no one's really done before? And no one really touches the International Space Station because there's so much you can get wrong as a thriller writer. But I happen to know some astronauts who designed the propulsion system for the International Space Station, who were test pilots that I've flown formation with. But I was like, okay, well, I can tackle this in a way that you don't have to get everything right. And so I went at it as a writer, not as a researcher. And I thought, okay, there's a way I can tell this story that you don't need to have all the details that are going to bog people down in a techno thriller. And there's a way to tell the story that is still gets it right, but still is enjoyable to read. And so once I did that, it all just kind of locked together.
It's not implausible that somebody infiltrates the International Space Station with,
It really isn't once you realize how,
right.
We play up there. All the space agencies across the world play together, even though we're adversarial, in every other way. But in science, and I kind of make a quip at that in the book that it's really theater. What we're doing, international scientific cooperation, is theater, because that's kind of truth to a degree.
Right. Well, I mean, much of the book doesn't take place there. Much of the book takes place underwater on Earth. But I was really interested. I never really thought about, orbits for the space station and why they would need to be changing orbits as either a defensive tactic against junk in space or another space station coming too close or something. But also, what would you do if there were, in fact, a bad actor? And, there's a book by Will Dean who's going to come and see us in March. He lives in the dark woods in Sweden, but he's emerging to come and visit us in March. Right. And in his most recent book, it's a locked room mystery, and it is about the people in the oil industry, the divers who work at the on the bed of the North Sea, where the pressure is just horrendous, and anything can kill you. Yeah. And there's like 6 people there, and then one of them is killed, and so it can only be one of the other 5 people, right?
Yep.
And it's a really interesting book. But I thought about when I was reading your book about all the ways that you can kill people in space, and then all the ways that you can kill people diving.
Yes.
And that the impetus for this is this ancient artifact that, may or may not have amazing powers.
Right. And I just thought, if I could set the hook early enough into how are these two things connected, because what happens is, the International Space Station incident happens in the prologue, and then for the rest of the book, you're following this character who you don't know if they're good or bad. Her name is Mojda Zehadi. She's an Iranian astronaut, and she vacillates between good and bad throughout the entire book, to the point where you really have to give up guessing because it's so...
but in a traditional, if you look at the Cambridge Five, for example, they're real life,
Yes.
people who are agents and then double agents and then
Right.
triple agents, and you never know.
Right. You never
Look
know.
at Kim Philby. He went on forever.
I wanted that locked room, but I didn't want to be stuck in the book in the locked room. So the locked room is kind of in the aftermath, and people are trying to figure out what happened post-incident.
You actually have 2 locked rooms.
Right.
You have the space station, and then you have the...
Yep.
And I'm assuming that your background in the Navy is why it is so plausible, the stuff, especially the stuff here in the water.
Yeah. So I wanted this story to cascade forward, and as you learn more about this character, they're also learning more about what happened on there, and you'll slowly reveal a little bit about this character. But I wanted what happens at the end for the character to make whoever they end up being, to make every decision that they made make sense in the context of what was happening.
You should ask him about the tech. I am completely unprepared to talk about technology, but it's an important part of the book.
Well, the technology about it is it's phenomenal and it's elaborate. And one of the things you do talk about is can you talk about the radiological side of it and
without giving too much away.
I guess this goes back to the supernatural, the interpretation or the impression that the book is supernatural. This is the out I'll give you.
Yeah.
Is that the book can be perceived as supernatural when you don't know much about the book or haven't read it yet. You get flap copy versus how you manipulated the science of it.
Yeah, so in the front of the book, there's a quote from Louis L'Amour, which I love, and it's often the supernatural is just the misunderstood. and that was kind of like my anchor kind of theme for the whole book, is that some things from our past, you may have been interpreted one way, and over the course of thousands of years, maybe they're truly explained by something scientific. But in terms of the technology in the book, like my character uses all kinds of technology, and that kind of stems from my background. I work in advanced prototype UAV development for the Navy, so I kind of get to see a lot of like what's out there, and so my character is kind of born of that. He's a former Navy pilot who can't fly anymore, who's, ironically, and now
So it's
he's
an
and
autobiography.
now he's done what I wish I did, is start a UAV company that does like all these surveys. But because he has access to all this extra advanced technology, advanced dynamic lidar, and things like that, he gets hired by a bunch of other people. So that's how he finds himself in this situation. Is he has the tools to find things that other people can't. So that's kind of the impetus that brings him into the fray with the technology that he uses. And he's kind of like a techie character. So, everything that the main character, Ethan Cain, does is techie. Like even down to his watch. He doesn't just have like a cool watch. He uses a Garmin watch, like that, the latest Garmin watch that is like solar powered and has GPS capabilities and stuff. So everything he does is related to modern technology as much as possible. That kind of helps fuel the character along, link it more to the modern. But he has this deep-seated understanding of history, because what people might not know here who haven't read the book is my character is very unique in that he's completely burned. So he's a disabled character. He's burned from his neck all the way down to his toes. And that kind of stems from also my own kind of history as well. So I survived a helicopter fire. I fared well, and my crew as well, but I had two friends who did not. And so one survived, one did not. And so the character kind of became like this amalgam of like three people, like my own experience of being in that situation and how it could have gone that way for myself. And then my friend who didn't fare well, and then my friend who did, but was left horribly disfigured for the rest of his life. And I always saw how people saw him and, interacted with him, but he never saw himself that way. And so when I was writing this character, I kind of took my experience, the memorial to my friend, and my other friend's kind of physical appearance and how he took, and I kind of put that all into this character. And so this character is very unique in that sense. I don't remember exactly where I was going with that.
No, and that's good actually, because we were talking about the technology, but it also talks and speaks to the your entry into the writing world was as a therapeutic process more than anything else, and that clearly has helped you, because these are traumatic issues, so it clearly helped you.
Yeah, and that's I think why the character reads so real for people, is because he is real. Like everything that he's dealing with is stuff that I dealt with myself. So, he's got a lot of me in him. He's his own character. He's a fictional character, but he definitely I was working stuff out on the page. But yeah,
Well, you've either got the gift or you've learned it by practicing in your first 5 unpublished books.
yeah, or reading a lot of Clive.
Or that too, but but making it clear. I mean, even though these are extremely complicated technologies, you write about them very clearly, so somebody like me who was totally lost can read it and even understand what's happening, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, where I got that from actually is I'm going to give a little hat tip to my wife, because I would come home from work and she would want to know like stuff, and I would have to explain it. And I would have to explain, and not like, dumb it down. It's just my wife doesn't do that stuff. So she would, she was an interior designer. So she would want to know, and she'd be like, well, ask me all these different questions. So I'd learn how to explain it to her in a very just simple, basic way. And I think that helped me when I was writing to think about like who I'm writing to, people who are not living in my world. Like, okay, I got to write this in a simple way that people can get it right off the bat, or think of a simile that, everyone would understand.
So you've become an expert in knowledge translation is what it comes down to.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
he did, and actually Will does too. I mean, that was one of the things I was impressed about. I mean, I'm never going to be, a patrol, a repair person on the bottom of the North Sea under like tons of bad things and all, but he made it possible to understand. You can see why I said at the outset that this book was extremely difficult to talk about, and the the cover copy, if you were to pick it up here at the store and read it, you might think, so this is a trust your bookseller book, okay? if I'm recommending it to you, you already know that it won't be too hard for you to read, and the writing will be good because those are that's my actual
I can give
standard.
my synopsis instead of what the publisher did if you want real quick.
Sure.
Okay. So, Blood and Treasure, it starts on the International Space Station in the prologue. You are in mission control following a technician in mission control. They have lost connection with the International Space Station. They have no idea what's happened, and neither do you as the reader. And you're attached to this character as they're trying to figure it out. And they finally get a connection back, a video connection, audio connection, but it's a little broken. And they witness an astronaut on board has murdered everybody, and then she blows up the station. So at that point, we start in our first chapter, and you're with our main character, Ethan Cain, and he's off the coast of Africa, off of Mozambique, and he's currently recovering or trying to recover an object that he's been searching for, that he's been hired to find, and you're kind of at the tail end of it. He's kind of almost already found it. So you're kind of with him as he's kind of surfacing this thing from under the water, and once he's kind of retrieved it, it's this enigmatic kind of stone chest that he doesn't really understand, but he's been paid a lot of money to recover it, and he does. And then at that moment, the Soyuz space capsule in a ball of fire almost takes out their boat and crashes into the Indian Ocean. And he goes.
Now the two stories are linked.
He
right?
goes to investigate it because it almost killed everybody on board. He goes to investigate it, and it's super weird. He dives on it, and he finds that it's the Soyuz space capsule, and it's cracked, and it's filling with water, and there's a lone astronaut inside. And it is, he doesn't know who she is, but you do as the reader. She's the astronaut from the prologue who was on board the space station. Her name is Mojda Zehadi, and she killed everybody on the station and blew it up. But he doesn't know that, and so he rescues her from drowning, and then he brings her aboard, and it turns out that the same people that are after him for the artifact that he's recovered are also after her, so the two become intertwined.
Don't tell us
an
everything.
adventure
Enough.
that races across the globe.
That's right.
And so
Only about
that's it.
1/10 of that could possibly make it onto the back.
That's
jacket
in the
of
first. That's in like the first couple
Right.
chapters. Yeah.
So anyway, I love it when every once in a while I get a book that it's really hard to sell, because you have to figure out some way to talk about it. And this one I thought was a real challenge. Steve's are more straightforward. I can talk. Yeah, sometimes Jim is like that. Yeah, Jim will be here with a new book on March 2nd. And I'm sure that I'll have to read it and figure out how to talk about it. Anyway, sir, we do have bourbon complimentary. If either of you'd like to come up and grab the bottle where are the glasses? Right. I mean, feel free. You're okay for the moment? All right. Well, this might be a good moment to take questions from the audience while you're all reeling from the description of the book. Yes, sir.
So, Steve, I think Alex was working for Interpol, and now she's working for the CIA, because I think the CIA stole her at the end of the last book or middle of the last book, right?
Yeah, and at the end of the first book, really, yes. Okay. Yeah, so Alex has had a complicated career trajectory for sure. So she went from the military and intelligence with the military into, for reasons that are disclosed really in the first book, she became an FBI special agent, seconded to Interpol, so she was sent to work for Interpol as an FBI legat. And then Caleb is introduced in the first book as well and his goal, we learn, as we find out more about him, is to draft her into the CIA, his special unit within the CIA, or within CIA. And through some interesting shenanigans at the end of book one, she becomes an asset of the CIA. So she is and I use the term actually special agent carries on through the series, partly because it's convenient, but partly because it took me a lot of research to identify there actually is a job title in CIA called a special agent, and that's with the global response team, basically. So I was able to keep that title. But yeah, she's had some interesting roles and affiliations.
So you have to be careful in the sense that the CIA has an international remit, whereas the FBI it's like MI5 and MI6 in Britain. The FBI is not supposed to be doing what Alex is doing, like in Maputo.
Yeah.
Well, nothing is working right now as the Constitution or previous stuff devised. And it
Previously, they would help other countries.
Right.
They had to be invited in.
Yes, and there were actions. If any of you watch The West Wing when it was on?
Yes.
You know how big it was. So if you remember, a huge plot driver in The West Wing was that we chased down a terrorist who was a threat, and the president approved it, and it was illegal, and they had to spend forever to kind of deal with that. And when you were reading about the boat strike and all, there it is again, and our senator is, really in the hot seat as a consequence of speaking out about it. It's interesting how fiction sometimes draws from real life, but sometimes it anticipates real life, and mirrors it.
Well, and that was actually the two things with Perfect Shot. I thought I had gone too far in a way with the storyline, but that was before Russia invaded Ukraine. So what I thought I was creating this almost too evil villain turned out to be almost not evil enough. And with the second story, I wrote out in the cold before much of the sort of conspiracy angle of, it's a conspiracy story, and there's operations happening in Finland that are meant to basically red flag operations, false flag operations going on, and that was done before the current political climate evolved and.
Finland joined NATO. wasn't it?
Exactly.
I remember we talked about that.
That's correct. So yeah, you, as a writer, you have, part of your job is to push the envelope of what might happen in the world. So you do have to be, part Nostradamus. Brad Thor is incredible at predicting world events. Yeah, and I like to take that on. Again, geopolitics is a special interest of mine. It's a fun reading subject of mine, and sort of to project world events as we know them today into what might happen later is always fun as a fiction writer.
Can I jump in? So it's actually really funny that you mentioned that, because when I was writing this book originally, I was trying to do the opposite. I was like, all these thriller writers are trying to predict what's going to happen and writing what is currently happening. And I want to, Clive used to say, like, I want to zag while they're zigging, right? And I took that to heart. I was like, okay, well, I want to do something different. So I wrote this book, and I wrote this book long before there was a war with Israel and Iran. And I actually originally wrote this book where Israel was more involved in the book, and America didn't have much of a role at all. And then everything kicked off when the publisher bought it, and then they were like, hey, can you remove Israel from this and make like America the target, because they're kind of like sensitive right now. So I had to do like a complete overhaul of the book, because I actually,
That's a danger.
but kind of like what you said, like the Nostradamus thing, like, these powers have been at war forever, in proxy. So,
Yeah, exactly.
it wasn't like I was, predicting the future, but I was like, oh, okay, no one's doing that. Everyone's doing this other stuff. Everyone's focused on Ukraine, and I'm going to do this. And then, they kicked off, and I was like, oh, great. Now now everyone's going to follow, and I'm going to be part of the next group of people following the next trend.
That's the danger of writing international thrillers, is that real events takes a while to write a book, takes a year to bring it into production as a rule, and real events can overcome you. So as readers, you have to allow for that, and you have to it's not the New York Times, it's a book. You have to think about that. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
What authors influenced you to begin writing, and then kind of the stories that you chose to write?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I go back a long ways. I started reading as a kid. I was reading sci-fi. So So speaking of sci-fi, that's not sci-fi, but Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury. So I was a real sci-fi fanatic. And I'm looking at the shelf right behind Barbara there, and there's Dune, the Dune trilogy. So Frank Herbert was huge when I was a teenager. But then I discovered Tom Clancy and Robert Ludlum and Frederick Forsyth and those guys who wrote in the 80s and 90s, that era of thriller. And those thrillers being internationally set really opened my eyes. So I've had a lot of influences, even as far as Nelson DeMille probably was one of the most contemporary at the time that I started to envision myself as a writer.
Charm School.
Yeah, Charm
Yeah.
School.
It was
and-
our
and
best-selling paperback for forever.
Charm School was great, but Plum Island was the one that grabbed me. And yeah, John Corey, that character. It was actually my wife was reading the John Corey character, and she'd be laughing and chuckling, and she put me onto the Nelson DeMille series of books and the John Corey series of books. So those were my major influences at the time.
I have to say, Nelson's son Alex is doing a really good job. Nelson died when they started the third book, and we did an event with Alex, and it's really great. So I think he's going to be able to carry on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anybody else? Question?
Question for Ryan. Ryan, as a writer, as a Navy helicopter pilot, have you ever reached out to Don Bentley and kind of talked, just pilot to pilot, service to service, and as he's a writer as well, very successful?
Sure, I've reached out to Don to teach him about flying helicopters when he needed advice. There you go, Don. No, Don. It's really funny, my pseudo relationship with Don. So, when I was struggling as a writer, I reached out to Don because we were like, Helo Bubbas, the Helo community. Even though it was Army, it's like you still got that Helo thing. So I was really struggling, and I got like 400 rejections, and I was like ready to give up. And I reached out to him, and I was like, "Hey, man, I didn't ask for anything. I was just like, do you have any tips for me? Like, what, can you help me? Because I am just flailing in this, struggle." And he gave me some tips, and he was kind of helped me out. So we had this kind of like internet relationship for a little bit. And then I finally got published, and then I told him, I was like, "Hey man, I got all this stuff." And he's like, "Oh, great." And then, I started going to these events, and everyone I would meet would be like, "Oh, you're a helicopter pilot writing thrillers. Like, you got to talk to Don Bentley, and you got to talk to Don." So everyone would tell me I got to talk to Don, right? And I like knew him online, but every time I would meet him, it would be like he was going and I was going, and we would like bump into each other. And he's way taller than me too, so he's way like jacked, so like.
And
I would see him.
I
I
don't think he likes people anyways. So.
Yeah, so
Army.
I would see him, and he would be like dressed like a cowboy, and like just this. He would always be ready to leave. So like we would just be like in passing, like, "Hey, how's it going?" And we'd start a conversation that would just end. So I had like passings with Don Bentley, and everyone keeps telling me I need to be friends with Don Bentley, but we're not. We're acquaintances. We're not friends yet. So Don, we need to be friends.
Don is frequently here with his books, but he also comes in.
Don, we should do an event. Let's do an event. We'll get Mike here.
People.
We'll do an event, and I'll teach you how to fly helicopters.
I really do think I'm going to try to work out a November 11, 2026 thriller thing and, include Don and a bunch of authors, so it'll be fine. But I have found that the thriller community is very supportive of other writers and, willing to share their expertise. There are a lot of Navy guys, and a new guy who I think is terrific and is going to do well. Jack Stewart is a Naval Academy graduate, but he was a Top Gun pilot, and that's a whole area of expertise. He's written 4 books about, Top Gun, and that's
He's a
and
friend of
then
mine too.
Andrews Wilson and Mike Woodward, they're all submarine guys. Or at least I'm not sure about Mike, but the other two, Andrews and Wilson, are submarine guys.
Jeff Wilson was a surgeon for
He
the
was,
Special Operations
Right.
Command. Yeah,
So, a lot of them have special expertise in addition to.
and they've been great. Like Andrews and like coming into this as a new writer, I didn't know what to expect. Like because in the Navy, you show up to a new squadron, and even if you're like a career pilot, you show up to a squadron, even though you know what you're doing, you're the new guy again.
Yep.
And like you're always like hazed, and so I didn't know what to expect coming into this career field. But Don Bentley had said like, "Oh, everyone's really nice, whatever." And I didn't believe him. And but no, everyone's been fantastic. Andrews and Wilson in particular, like they just are like, "Oh, you're a veteran, and oh, you're in the Navy," like. And just their wing comes over you, and they just kind of guide you through.
They have their own special imprint
Yep.
called AWE, Andrews Wilson Entertainment,
Yep.
I think it is. Right, and so I think it's great that they're going to cluster more guys together because books go in and out of fashion with publishers and readers, and not right now the romance and the horror. They're sort of like two extremes. So we have romantasy over here, we have horror over here, it's all escape reading, and then we have a little group of sort of like cozy writers, and thriller and hard-boiled crime and all are not at the moment nearly as popular as they were, but it reflects, I'm telling you, after the Da Vinci Code published, there was like 5 years where the only thing that you could get was a Da Vinci clone. Everything was a religious conspiracy thriller. You know, it just was. And what always happens is that it dies of its own weight because that's all there is, and people read it, and then they, you know, it's like, okay, what's next? The most frequent question I am asked is, what's the next big thing?
And no one knows what that is.
I'm
we
pretty
just
good at it.
You're
actually.
probably
Yeah,
better at it
but
than
still.
most. But I mean, for us, we're just trying to do. I mean, for me, I speak for myself. I took Mark Graney has been like a really big inspiration for me because he always tries to push. You know, I've since become friends with him. He's a really great human being.
Me and Jack will be here. Jack Stewart. will
Great.
be
Two
here
of my friends.
on
Oh, maybe I
February
should come back.
16th, so
Maybe I
that
should
might
come
be-
back.
That might be a time for you to come.
But no, he's a great human being, but he also pushes himself as a writer and does something different every time. And I took that to heart when I was trying to learn how to write. To just constantly be different, and even if it doesn't sell, like, you know, at least when you're a writer, like, it feels good to write something that's different. That, you know.
One of the interesting things that I've been talking a lot about with my agent and with others is it's not so much that the readership for thrillers has been dying down, because it clearly hasn't. There's still a hunger for the types of books.
So more people reading the other ones.
More people reading the other ones, and even if you go into the industry level of it, the number of editors editing what we write, that's where there might be a tapering off, because, you know, the editors of old, I don't want to say old editors, but the editors of old who would edit the Tom Clancy's and the Jason Bourne series types books, they're not around as much anymore, and no one's. They're named Tom Colgan, and we love Tom, but he might be
I think there's actually
one of the
more
few.
than one Tom Colgan.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much command. I love you, Tom, and you do great.
Something like Amazon publishing change. I mean, there's a lot of
No, what it really is that there always have been a lot of women. We're an unusual bookstore. Most bookstores, something like 90% of their customers are women, and they're reading women's fiction and all the rest of it. We have always been a gender-neutral bookstore in the sense that we have so many guys. And that was Tony Hillerman was, you know, always Clive, you know, and so we have lots of male readers as well as authors, but that's not necessarily true. So publishers have hired an awful lot of women, and they don't acquire military thrillers.
Right.
They acquire, you know, romance or whatever it all is, and that will change too. But you're right, a lot of the old school editors basically aged out.
Yeah, and sorry. Right.
Oh, I was gonna, you know, since we're talking about romance, it's very interesting. So we were talking about this before on Blood Oath. You know, I was very surprised in a good way that there's actually a romance element that's a little deeper than just your normal thriller romance element. Like, it goes a little further to the point of like absolute tension, and several times over, and it's very well done. And I was actually surprised by it because I didn't expect it when I was reading it. So when I read Blood Oath, I hadn't read the first two books in the series. So coming into the series fresh, it was a great read because, you know, Steve takes you on like an escalator right into the story, and you don't need any
Mark Graney has
backstory.
heavy romance in it. You know, Brad
Yes.
Taylor does. James, they all do.
But almost like they all have that romance, but in this book in particular, it amped it up to the physical interaction of the romance that was more on almost a romance novel level, to the point where I was like, whoa, he's got this in here. And I was but it was well done. And so, like, you know, did your wife have anything to do with that, or did you, as she is your first reader, or did you
No, my wife
lean into just kind of the character and the situation in the story?
Yeah, that's a yes and a no, because I think if I had asked Lynn, she would have cautioned me about consummating the relationship, if you want to call it that, because we've seen from books to film to TV series how, you know, like Bones, when they put the two main characters in the Bones series together, the series kind of died off, in my opinion. So it's that tension that you mentioned that brings the interest of the reader. It makes the reader interested.
Okay, have you had this discussion with Brad Thor recently?
Did you really?
No, I said, have you had that discussion? Because, you know, having killed off the wife of Scott Horvath, you know, now he's entangled with the Norwegian ninja.
That's
So
right.
He's right back into it. You know?
That's right.
You can talk to him. Brad will be here with a co-author on February 11th.
that Ward?
And then he'll be back on June 16th, roughly, with his own book. So
Will he be here with Ward? Ward Larson?
Ward Larson
Yeah.
is coming with him.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
In February. Anyway, it's hard to sit in these seats any longer. I appreciate it, but we know they're butt killers, and so we should really let you go. But I do have a little swag to give away. This is my hat from Thriller Fest last year. I think it should go to you. I think it should go to you.
And I'm just going to say, because I asked Barbara beforehand, she hadn't read this book yet, but I have. This book is phenomenal. So Simon Simon teamed up with Ryan Steck.
He's Canadian too, isn't he?
He's
He
a good,
is.
yeah,
Since I'm-
great guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they wrote a knockout book. This is awesome.
right.
So
And it just came out.
it did.
All right, so I have to figure out how we're going to give it away, right? Who has never been?
I think you should give it to who brought the most
before?
bourbon.
Have you been here before, sir? All right. Well, she got the hat, so I'm gonna award it to the other newbie.
Congratulations.
There you are, sir. You are entirely welcome. Right, and so we still
Enjoy.
have bourbon, and we can clear off that table. Or Patrick, it's back there. Right. So why don't we clear this off, and then you can get your book signed and take photos and all that fun stuff. Talk to the authors if you would like to do that. So thank you very much. Virtual audience, thank you for
Thank you
joining
very
Form a
much.
line.
Right.
First 50 people on the left, and the rest of the people on the right.
And if you have your own social media and you like posting things, you can post the video or recommend the book, because we don't actually have a marketing budget. No, the Poison Pen has operated all these years without ever doing a paid ad or
Can I-
any kind of marketing.
Can I do a little plug too?
Sure.
So for my book too, the second one in the series comes out in June, and if you read this and you like it, you can go to my website ryanpote.com, and there's a completely free, fully produced interactive story video game that is on story game on my website. You can click it. It's a Christmas party called White Elephant. You, the reader, are invited to the main character's house for a Christmas party, for his company Christmas party. And at that Christmas party, you will navigate through 17 different endings, 95 different scenes. It's a choose your own adventure. I can't say that because that's copyright, but it's a choose your own story. And you'll meet characters from this book, meet characters from the next book. You'll learn things about the next book. It's kind of a teaser for the next book, but it's also just really fun. It takes a couple minutes to go through. You can go through it as many times as you want. If you finish it, there's a little code you'll get. You'll get an ornament from me. It's a custom ornament that commemorates a Christmas party. We'll send it out to you. But it's free. It's mobile ready. There's a save button. You can play it as many times as you want. It's super fun. But we made it just for you, the readers. So have fun.
And Ryan has become quite an expert in the multi-platform writing.
We're
school,
doing
so.
different stuff with this book. That's all.
Very
I'm saying.
good. And all I can say is, by blood oath. That's it. That's it. I don't have a pitch as good as.
And we don't just have this bourbon in the book because it's in the book. Like, we actually drink this bourbon because I love this bourbon. No, it was in the book because I like it.
It deserved a mention in the book, but it is
Yeah.
an excellent bourbon.
So-
Thank you, Michael. One of the
That is why. So if you can
Founders
go
for
out
being
and find Four Branches bourbon, I guarantee you won't want to drink any other bourbon. So Blanton's, eat your heart out.
Thank you. Well done, Barbara.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Let me do this. Let me get